In an era marked by dramatic shifts in international relations, the United States under President Donald Trump has embarked on a foreign policy that has left many of its traditional allies in Europe feeling alienated. This strategic pivot has not gone unnoticed. Lord expressed deep concern over these developments, asserting that they could lead to a new world order characterized by diminished U.S. influence. "We're living in a world of major powers and ruling spheres of influence," he warned, suggesting that the erosion of democratic norms and the empowerment of autocratic regimes could be among the long-term consequences of Trump's foreign policy. Lord's historical perspective is particularly relevant given his involvement in the landmark 1972 meeting between Nixon and Mao Zedong. He reflected on how the current U.S. administration's actions could undermine decades of bipartisan foreign policy, especially in Asia. "If this trend continues, no one can depend on the United States under Trump to come to their defense," he remarked. Noting that countries in the region may feel compelled to either align more closely with China or pursue their own nuclear capabilities. The former ambassador articulated a stark scenario where America's allies in Asia view the current U.S. foreign policy with astonishment and alarm. The potential for countries to accommodate themselves to China's growing assertiveness is a pressing concern. "China and North Korea are delighted at what's going on," Lord explained, adding that the implications for Taiwan are particularly troubling. The ongoing tensions surrounding Taiwan, a self-governing democratic island claimed by China, could be exacerbated if U.S. support is perceived as waning. Recent developments in U.S. trade policy further complicate the situation. The Trump administration has announced plans to implement 25% tariffs on imports from both Canada and Mexico, alongside an additional 10% tariff on Chinese goods. These measures are framed as national security initiatives aimed at curbing drug trafficking. However, they also risk igniting retaliatory measures from these nations, as evidenced by Canada's and Mexico's vow to impose reciprocal tariffs. This trade war could have ripple effects on global markets, leading to increased inflation and economic instability. As the U.S. continues to navigate these turbulent waters, the long-term impacts of Trump's foreign policy remain uncertain. While the administration emphasizes a transactional approach to international relations, the potential for a fractured global order looms large. As nations reassess their alliances and security strategies, it is clear that the geopolitical landscape is in flux. The future remains uncertain, but the consequences of America's current trajectory could reshape international relations for years to come. With China poised to capitalize on the shifting dynamics. In a time of heightened geopolitical tensions, the interplay between the United States, China, and Russia is becoming increasingly complex, with significant implications for both national security and international business. Recent reports indicate that U.S. intelligence agencies have uncovered attempts by Russia and China to recruit disgruntled federal employees, a move that underscores the ongoing vulnerabilities within American governmental ranks. Simultaneously, China is navigating internal changes in leadership while responding to new trade threats from the U.S., setting the stage for a tumultuous period ahead. According to sources familiar with U.S. intelligence, both Russia and China are actively seeking to exploit discontent among federal employees, potentially targeting those who feel marginalized or dissatisfied with their roles. This strategy is seen as a direct attempt to bolster their influence and gather intelligence against a backdrop of growing concerns over national security. As one analyst noted, the recruitment of insiders who are already within the system presents a unique challenge, as these individuals may have access to sensitive information that could compromise U.S. interests. On a parallel front, China's political landscape is shifting with the abrupt replacement of its technology minister, who had reportedly not been seen in 2 months. This leadership change comes at a critical time as the Chinese government faces mounting pressure from the U.S. over trade policies and intellectual property disputes. Experts suggest that the new minister will need to navigate a delicate balance of fostering innovation while responding to external criticisms, especially as the U.S. threatens to escalate tariffs on Chinese goods. This threat was exacerbated by President Donald Trump's recent announcement of an additional 10% tariff on Chinese imports set to take effect on March 4, coinciding with China's annual parliamentary meetings. In a statement, a spokesperson from China's Ministry of Commerce firmly opposed the tariffs, asserting that if the U.S. insists on its own way, China will take all necessary countermeasures to defend its legitimate rights and interests. The reaction from Beijing indicates a readiness to retaliate, which may include raising tariffs on select U.S. imports and tightening export controls on critical minerals vital to U.S. industries. Kurt Campbell, a former senior U.S. diplomat known for his role in the Pivot to Asia strategy, is poised to address American and Hong Kong business leaders in April, aiming to facilitate better relations amid these tensions. His participation in the upcoming AmCham Hong Kong conference, as announced by the American Chamber of Commerce, is anticipated to provide insights into navigating the complexities of U.S.-China relations and uncovering emerging opportunities for economic growth. As the geopolitical landscape evolves, the ramifications of these developments will be closely scrutinized. The recruitment efforts by adversarial nations, coupled with trade conflicts and leadership changes, suggest that the coming months will be critical for international relations. With both China and the U.S. seemingly at an impasse, observers are left to ponder whether dialogue can be achieved or if the situation will escalate further. The stakes are high, and the outcomes will undoubtedly shape the future of global politics and economics in the years to come. As Chinese companies grapple with a slowing domestic economy, many are increasingly looking to overseas markets for growth opportunities. This trend has gained momentum as businesses like Haiti, a popular fruit and milk tea chain, venture beyond their home turf to establish a presence in countries such as the United States, United Kingdom, and Australia. On a chilly February day in Virginia, local resident Raymond Fong found himself waiting for hours to sample Haitia's offerings at its new outlet, which marked the brand's 27th store in the U.S. and its continued expansion beyond China, where it has nearly 80 locations. The shift towards international markets is largely driven by the challenges faced by Chinese companies at home, where intense competition and regulatory pressures have begun to erode profit margins. Some people call 2023 the first year of going overseas for restaurants and beverage businesses, a Beijing-based macroeconomic researcher who wished to remain anonymous shared with Voice of America. The domestic market is no longer viable. This sentiment is echoed by Eric Wong, a New York-based investor who noted that many businesses are compelled to explore foreign markets as domestic profitability diminishes. The trend towards internationalization is not isolated to food and beverage brands. Chinese companies across various sectors are looking abroad as a viable alternative for growth. A report from the Rhodium Group indicates a rebound in Chinese investments overseas, rising from $47 billion in 2020 to an impressive $103 billion in 2023. While food and beverage brands represent just a fraction of this overall investment, they capture significant consumer attention and interest. Take Mishuai City, for example, which began its international expansion in Vietnam and has since grown its footprint in several countries, amassing over 7,000 stores globally. Similarly, hot pot chain Haidilao, founded in Sichuan in 1994, has successfully taken its brand public on the U.S. Nasdaq stock market and established a presence in various countries, further highlighting this trend of seeking opportunities abroad. Despite the appeal of international markets, these expansions are fraught with challenges. Wong pointed out that operating in foreign markets can be difficult for companies that have relied on established supply chains within China. Haidilao can succeed in China because they own the entire industrial chain, he explained. It hasn't established this same advantage overseas, so it is more difficult to do business. Nonetheless, the potential for high profitability in foreign markets remains a driving force. The Beijing-based researcher emphasized that despite the high costs associated with opening stores in regions like Europe and the US, the potential returns are substantial. The cost is high, the threshold is high, and the profit margin is high, he said, underscoring the allure of these new markets even as companies navigate complex regulatory landscapes and consumer preferences. The dynamic of Chinese companies expanding abroad coincides with broader geopolitical tensions, particularly as the U.S. revamps its trade policies. With President Trump's administration levying tariffs and pursuing a more protectionist agenda, Chinese businesses are faced with the dual challenge of navigating international trade barriers while seeking growth. Wang noted that the proportion of business conducted within the U.S. is shrinking as companies explore markets with fewer restrictions. As these trends unfold, the upcoming 2 sessions in China will likely provide further insights into the government's economic strategies and responses to external pressures. Scheduled to commence on March 4, this annual legislative gathering will feature key discussions on economic support, trade resilience, and other pressing issues facing the Chinese economy. In conclusion, the landscape for Chinese companies is shifting as they adapt to a slowing domestic economy and increasingly look to international markets for growth. While the path to success abroad presents its own set of challenges, the potential for profitability combined with the necessity of diversifying markets may well redefine the future of these businesses. As geopolitical dynamics evolve, the strategies employed by these companies will be critical to their sustained success and ability to thrive in an increasingly interconnected global economy. In a series of assertive military maneuvers, China has intensified its presence in the Pacific, showcasing its military might while the United States grapples with shifting priorities under the Trump administration. Recent military drills near Australia and Vietnam signal a clear message: Beijing intends to assert its influence and territorial claims. Irrespective of Washington's current focus on global challenges such as the conflicts in Ukraine and the Middle East. Amidst this backdrop, 3 Chinese naval vessels, including a heavily armed cruiser, were spotted in the Tasman Sea conducting artillery drills. This show of force was closely followed by live-fire exercises in the Gulf of Tonkin, where tensions have been heightened by Vietnam's own territorial claims. Experts note that these drills, albeit not large-scale, reflect China's expanding military capabilities and its ambition to project power across multiple regions simultaneously. Wen Kok-jung, a visiting fellow at the ISAS Yusof Ishak Institute, remarked the timing, with many in the Indo-Pacific region concerned about the U.S. commitments under President Donald Trump, is just perfect. China's activities come at a time when the U.S. military's focus appears divided. The Trump administration's mixed signals about whether to confront or cooperate with Beijing have left regional allies uncertain about their security guarantees. Dan Blumenthal, a senior fellow at the American Enterprise Institute, emphasized that while these Chinese displays may seem theatrical, they are underpinned by a substantial military capability that allows Beijing to raise the stakes in regional disputes. Is wary of being caught in the middle as it seeks to strengthen its security ties with the U.S. while managing its economic relationship with China. The recent Chinese drills in the Gulf of Tonkin were perceived as a direct response to Vietnam's own territorial assertions, yet the Vietnamese government has opted for a restrained response, possibly to avoid further aggravating tensions with Beijing. Australia, meanwhile, has expressed concern over the provocative nature of the Chinese naval exercises, especially given the lack of prior notification regarding their operations. As Admiral Samuel J. Paparo of the U.S. Indo-Pacific Command recently noted, American forces are ill-prepared for the rapid military buildup in the region. The arrival of Chinese warships near Australian waters has been described by local officials as an intimidation tactic, indicating that China is willing to challenge established norms of maritime conduct. In Taiwan, the situation is particularly precarious as the island continues to rely on U.S. support in the face of persistent Chinese military threats. As Chinese aircraft routinely encroach upon Taiwanese airspace, concerns grow regarding the reliability of U.S. commitments to defend Taiwan. President Trump's ambiguous statements on whether the U.S. would intervene in a conflict over Taiwan echo a historical pattern of strategic ambiguity that has characterized U.S. policy for decades. However, the recent unpredictability of the Trump administration has led to heightened anxieties among Taiwanese officials, particularly in light of Trump's shifting focus toward economic negotiations with China. The broader implications of these developments raise questions about the future of U.S. influence in the Indo-Pacific and the potential for increased regional tensions. as China continues to flex its military capabilities. The ability of U.S. allies to navigate their relationships with both Washington and Beijing will be tested. The lack of a coherent U.S. strategy could embolden China, prompting further military posturing and leaving regional partners to reassess their security strategies. As we look to the future, the strategic landscape in the Asia-Pacific is likely to remain fraught with uncertainty. The interplay between U.S. foreign policy, regional military dynamics, and China's ambitions will shape not only the security architecture of the Indo-Pacific but also the broader geopolitical landscape. The coming months will be crucial as nations re-evaluate their positions amid an evolving power balance, with the potential for both conflict and cooperation hanging in the balance. In the realm of global geopolitics, the dynamics of international relations are ever shifting, particularly in the context of U.S.-China relations. As the world watches closely, recent developments suggest that the landscape is becoming increasingly complex, with major players recalibrating their strategies in response to emerging challenges. Notably, the ongoing tensions between the United States and China have opened the door for alternative alliances, particularly as China's diplomatic efforts gain momentum in Europe and the Pacific. As U.S. President Donald Trump continues to adopt a confrontational stance towards traditional allies, particularly in Europe, Chinese diplomats have embarked on a concerted charm offensive. Recent meetings in Brussels, Dublin, Munich, and Paris have underscored China's message: "Your best friend has abandoned you." This sentiment reflects the growing disillusionment among European nations as the U.S. appears to pivot towards a closer alignment with Russia, particularly in light of Trump's controversial endorsements of Russian President Vladimir Putin amid the ongoing Ukraine crisis. European officials are expressing concerns over the U.S.'s unilateral approach, which has included the imposition of tariffs and a perceived abandonment of multilateral cooperation. Virtually nobody now expects Western powers to continue collaborating on China policy, one diplomat remarked, highlighting the changing landscape as Europe considers de-risking from the U.S. While these discussions unfold, China is seizing the opportunity to position itself as a more reliable partner, promising collaboration on global issues and offering a counter-narrative to the U.S.'s recent foreign policy direction. Simultaneously, India's engagement with the Pacific Islands reflects another strategic pivot in response to China's rising influence. The Pacific Islands, a collection of 14 sovereign nations, have become increasingly significant in the geopolitical chess game, controlling vital maritime routes and rich natural resources. Historically focused on South Asia, India's recent outreach to the Pacific underscores its commitment to countering China's Belt and Road Initiative, which has seen heavy investments across these islands, often resulting in increased financial dependence on Beijing. India's approach, encapsulated in its Act East policy, aims to build stronger ties with Pacific nations through diplomatic outreach and cooperative initiatives addressing common challenges such as climate change and development. The Pacific Islands are particularly vulnerable to rising sea levels and extreme weather, and India is positioning itself as a partner willing to provide technical assistance and sustainable development solutions. India's engagement with the Pacific Islands marks a significant evolution in its foreign policy, analysts note. By broadening its global partnerships, New Delhi not only reinforces its Indo-Pacific vision but also enhances its international stature as a responsible global power. However, the challenges are substantial. India's more modest contributions may struggle to compete with China's vast financial resources. And navigating the complex political landscape of the Pacific Islands requires nuanced diplomatic strategies. As these diplomatic tides shift, the implications for U.S.-China relations remain profound. Experts suggest that while Trump may attempt to foster personal diplomacy with Chinese President Xi Jinping, the underlying structural tensions are unlikely to dissipate easily. The potential for renewed competition, possibly escalating towards confrontation, hangs in the balance. Looking to the future, the evolving alliances and strategies among global powers are set to shape the international landscape significantly. As India deepens its ties in the Pacific and China continues to court European nations, the stage is set for a multipolar world where traditional alliances are tested and redefined. The outcomes of these diplomatic maneuvers will not only influence regional stability but also determine the broader trajectory of global politics in the years to come.